I'm just kind of think, do I mention this or not? Lasai. Yeah, I think I'll frame it like this actually. So, J.K. Rowling has become increasingly prolific on Twitter on a certain issue, which is trans people and trans rights. And I'm not going to have a polemic about J.K. Rowling because I think it is distressing and disturbing that this issue, on social media at least, has become a psychodrama involving a children's author, when obviously it should be about people's lives. And it was aggravating for LGBTQ people in general to have J.K. Rowling try to present herself as a champion of lesbian, gay, and bisexual people against the supposed menace posed by the trans rights movement. And the reason I just mention this is anyone who knows trans people in Britain knows what a terrible time this is for them because of the way much of the British media talks about them on a very regular basis, the way lots of mainstream politicians talk about them, and the fact social media has become a cesspit of just a free-for-all when it comes to anti-trans rhetoric. And trans people who I know say privately that they are just looking at ways of leaving the country because they feel that this country has become a hostile environment. Transphobic hate crimes have gone up fourfold in the last few years. Homophobic hate crimes have gone up threefold. And I think just the point I would make about this particular issue, it's not, completely actually relevant for the main topic, because actually Vladimir Putin himself has intervened on this issue, engaged in overtly anti-trans and homophobic rhetoric, denouncing gender ideology as and denouncing trans people as worse than COVID. Lovely fella. And actually, at the moment, there are people in Ukraine, trans people in Ukraine, who can't flee the country because the gender on their passport is not the gender which they should be accepted as. And firstly, I'm just so sorry for what trans people are going through and have to keep going through at the moment, having their existence just constantly discussed and debated, placed, across the British media and on social media, often by just anonymous, obsessive trolls for whom transphobia has taken over their lives and they literally don't talk about anything else. Just reduced, to just constantly put in the context of being would-be sexual predators or threats to children, which is exactly, of course, how gay people were always and often still portrayed. I think the first point I just want to make is those who are trying to separate lesbian, gay, and bisexual people from trans people are on hiding to nothing. You can't do that. And there are always members of any oppressed group who you can find who'll say anything and everything. I mean, there were gay people who opposed equal marriage. I remember a TV show on Channel 4 had two gay people, one who supported equal marriage and one who opposed it. That was Milo Yiannopoulos, by the way, who opposed it, who went on to become an overt alt-right provocateur and Trumpist. You can find women. Well, there were women who opposed women's suffrage. There was an entire organization led by women opposed to women's right to vote. In America, the campaign on the Equal Rights Amendment, which tried to embed women's equality in the US Constitution, was the movement against it was led by women. Phyllis Schlafly was the figurehead of that overtly anti-women's right movement. You can find examples of anti-Semitic Jewish people. You can find literally any member of any oppressed group who you can find to say anything. So you will find lesbian, gay, and bisexual people who will be very transphobic or anti-trans, but they are such a small minority. And actually, if you're lesbian, gay, or bisexual, there are differences. I mean, there's a difference in experience between a lesbian and a gay man and a bisexual person, for a start. And there's a difference between those groups. There's a difference between, I don't know, a working class black gay guy working in a supermarket and a white CEO gay owner of that supermarket. There are differences, but there's a commonality. And the commonality is that lesbian, gay men and bisexuals and trans people are all oppressed and persecuted because we're all deemed to violate gender norms. That's the basis of anti-LGBTQ hostility. So for gay men, for example, the reason gay men suffer homophobia is that it's a secondary outcome of patriarchy and misogyny, because it's this idea that men, the most unmanly thing a man could do is have sex with a man. That's the most degrading, unmanly thing you can do. That's the basis of it. It's like you've become like a woman, and that is the most degrading thing a man can be, as an example. So it's all very interlinked on that basis, that commonality of experience. As I've said, the same tropes directed against trans people were always directed against gay people and bisexual people, which is being would-be sexual predators, threats to children, defying the laws of biology. God made Adam and Eve, he didn't make Adam and Steve. Why should the majority have to redefine themselves for a small minority? They've got more rights than us these days. That's a classic. It's a mental illness. Homosexuality was only removed as a mental illness by the World Health Organization in the early 1990s. That is a fetish. I mean, we could go on. I mean, it's just the same songs played over and over again. And, I mean, I find it, I'm the violin out because there's people who've had far worse than me. I've been beaten up, gay bashed by a Nazi on my birthday. He served nearly a 3-year prison sentence. The judge found it's because, in part, my views expressed on LGBTQ issues. I've no doubt that the surge in homophobic hate crimes are linked to the anti-trans atmosphere that's being woven in this country by media outlets and the like. And I just think, firstly, it's important to say to trans people out there that you are loved and accepted for who you are by millions of people, that most people are not obsessed with your existence, that there are people who've clearly been radicalized on the internet and gone down so many rabbit holes, they've just lost any sense of perspective. And this is their all-consuming obsession when there's so many things in the world to be angry about and genuinely, legitimately worried about. And the existence of trans people who just want to get on with their lives and live happy, comfortable lives like everybody else, it's just not one of them. So I just wanted to make that point, because I just, you see on Twitter, here we go again. It's a psychodrama. Now it's, J.K. Rowling's Rowling's trending again. And then you just, that every single person who's obsessed with trans people in a negative way, just jumps on Twitter, and it just becomes a mess. And I just think it's important that, just to make that point, that, you can't separate lesbian, gay, and bisexual people and trans people, despite the efforts of some to do that. Not least straight celebrities using social media to try and suggest there's a conflict within, to try and stir up a conflict within LGBTQ people. I find that just quite nauseating. So, imagine using your platform to try and stir up conflict amongst the minority, which is suffering growing hate crimes against it. I just not the best use of energy and time, is it really? But that's all I wanted to say, because, as I said, it shouldn't be the psychodrama. It should be about the lived experience of LGBTQ people. And I would say, just finally on that LGBTQ people have suffered huge oppression over the years from a variety of different people, but a lot of that has been overcome because actually we're a resilient minority, and we will stand together with our trans siblings and with everybody else in the LGBTQ rainbow. And just finally, again, transphobia is an evil on its own terms, but it is clearly ricocheting. My social media now is just full of anti-trans extremists screaming at me for being, suggesting I'm a paedophile, and that, just overtly classic, the old kind of homophobic tunes, talking about gay men in just degrading ways. There was one, I mean, this is just doing my nutting. There's a journalist, I won't name him because he's been palled on a weekend. He's a gay man who co-parents with 2 lesbians. Just to explain what that means, because some of you might not know what that means, co-parenting. So co-parenting is when, in this particular context, when you get gay men and lesbians who want to have children of their own, who come up with an arrangement where the man obviously provides the sperm, and then they raise a child together. They're in separate homes, so they divide up the week or whatever. They divide up the time between them to raise a child. Now, he made the mistake of recommending this to me, and we talked on Twitter about this, and got absolutely piled on by these anti-trans extremists who were like, "This is misogyny," and they were trying to. They obviously didn't know what co-parenting was. They were talking about surrogacy. I mean, whatever you think about surrogacy, co-parenting isn't surrogacy. Co-parenting is just men and women coming up with an arrangement to have kids, like anybody else, and they just won't let this go. And the only conclusion you can come to is they just don't want gay people to be parents, because there's no other objection to co-parenting. What's the objection to co-parenting? No one's being oppressed in that context. But that's where it got to, and they've all piled on him and piled on me for having engaged with this, this loving dad with a loving family, and everybody who knows that family knows just like a beautiful, loving family. It is depressing and grim. It's a grim time, isn't it? Just wanted to end with that because, it's been talked about on social media, and I'm an LGBTQ person, so I might as well obviously occasionally talk about LGBTQ issues.